There's a strange comfort in thinking we make our own choices, that our opinions, preferences, beliefs, even our moods, are our own. We like to believe that we are the authors of our actions, that when we choose, we are free. But what if we're not? What if, right now, there are invisible forces pulling at you, softly, silently, shaping what you want, what you fear, and how you see the world? What if the thoughts that feel the most true to you weren't planted by truth, but by repetition, manipulation, or pressure? This isn't science fiction. It's psychology. It's marketing. It's culture. It's fear. It's love. It's everything you've ever absorbed without realizing it. And most people never notice. The scariest kind of influence is the one you don't see. You feel it like a breeze, soft, unthreatening, until you wake up years later wondering why you didn't chase that dream, speak up for yourself, or walk away when you should have. You thought it was your voice saying "I can't," when really, it was someone else's whisper echoing in your head. We've all been influenced, and we all influence others. That's not always a bad thing. Influence helps us grow, teaches us empathy, connects us. But there's a darker side too. One that steals your agency without asking. One that disguises control as kindness and pressure as love. It's not just about peer pressure or manipulative people. Influence is baked into how we live. It hides in advertising, school rules, family expectations, TikTok trends, comment sections, and silence. Especially silence. Sometimes the loudest form of influence is not what people say, but what they don't. You notice your friends never talk about their dreams, so you stop talking about yours. You grow up in a family that never cries, so you teach yourself to stay quiet when you hurt. You live in a world that only praises achievement, so you believe your worth is tied to your productivity. Influence isn't always a shout. It's a pattern. A nudge. A look. A story repeated so often it starts to feel like fact. Many people think manipulation is about power, persuasion, and pressure. But more often, it's about shaping beliefs so deeply that people don't even think to question them. When you're taught to value being liked over being honest, you learn to smile when you're hurting. When you're praised for being mature every time you stay silent, you begin to believe that silence is strength, even when it's really fear. The truth is, we don't just inherit our eye color and names. We inherit habits, narratives, guilt, doubt. Sometimes we carry wounds we never asked for. Sometimes we're living someone else's dream. And sometimes we don't even realize how far we've wandered from who we really are. To see the strings, you have to be brave. You have to pause long enough to ask, why do I believe what I believe? Whose voice is shaping my thoughts? What am I afraid will happen if I choose differently? Because influence thrives in passivity. It feeds on autopilot. But when you stop and notice, when you begin to question, it loses power. We're going to explore the different ways other people influence us. Some are obvious. Most are subtle. All of them matter. And no, you don't need to become cold or disconnected to protect yourself. You just need awareness. You need language. You need truth. This is not about blaming others. It's about reclaiming yourself. At some point in life, almost everyone learns this lesson: approval feels safe. Being liked is rewarded. And rejection, even subtle, stings more than we expect. It starts early. A parent praises you for being such a good kid when you stay quiet. A teacher smiles wider when you give the answer they want, not the one you feel. Your friends pull away a little when you share an unpopular opinion. The message is quiet but clear: conform, and you'll be accepted. Question, and you'll risk the cold. Over time, this changes you. You start choosing your words carefully, not to express truth, but to avoid disapproval. You overthink texts. You rehearse conversations. You smile when you disagree. You say yes when you mean no. And eventually, you stop asking what you really want, because the question becomes, what do they want from me? You become good at reading the room, at anticipating reactions, at pleasing everyone but yourself. This isn't weakness. It's survival. Human beings are wired for connection. Thousands of years ago, rejection could mean exile, which could mean death. Our nervous systems haven't fully caught up. Even today, a look of disappointment can activate the same threat response as physical danger. That's why criticism feels personal. Why silence can be louder than shouting. Why some people chase approval like air. The fear of disapproval doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it looks like success. You overachieve because you don't want to disappoint. You post your wins but hide your doubts. You stay busy, helpful, agreeable, not because you're thriving, but because you're scared to stop. And deep down, there's a voice asking, would they still love me if I stopped performing? Here's the hard truth. When your self-worth depends on external validation, you'll shapeshift endlessly to fit in. But the more you twist yourself to be liked, the more you disappear. Until one day, you don't recognize the life you're living or the person living it. Approval is addictive. That's what makes it dangerous. And the people around you don't always realize they're part of the problem. They might think they're helping, complimenting your achievements, encouraging your politeness, celebrating your productivity. But if they only cheer for the version of you that's easy, agreeable, or successful, then they're not really seeing you. Real connection doesn't require performance. It doesn't shrink you. It doesn't punish honesty. And it doesn't fall apart when you show your mess. But to find those kinds of connections, you have to be willing to risk disapproval. To say no. To disappoint. To be misunderstood. That's the moment your freedom begins. When you can hear the disapproving tone, feel the tension in the room, and still stay true to yourself. That's not rebellion. That's integrity. The people who truly care will adjust. And the ones who leave? They were in love with your mask, not your heart. So here's your invitation. Notice when your choices are driven by fear of rejection. Ask yourself who you're trying to impress, and whether their approval is worth your silence. Because being liked is nice. But being yourself is rare. And rare is powerful. There's a strange kind of manipulation that doesn't come with shouting, threats, or fists. It arrives quietly, dressed as love, concern, duty. It sounds like, after all I've done for you, I guess I'm just not important to you anymore. Fine. Do what you want. This isn't always intentional. Sometimes, the people doing it don't even realize they are. But that doesn't make it harmless. Control doesn't always look like control. It's often wrapped in guilt. That tightening in your chest when someone's voice softens just enough to make you feel like you've let them down. That hesitation before speaking your mind, because last time, they gave you the silent treatment for a week. That internal debate, should I say no, or should I just avoid the conflict? Fear. Obligation. Pressure. These are invisible ropes that shape your choices, not from outside, but from within. And that's what makes it so powerful. You don't even realize you're being steered. You just feel tired, confused, on edge. You explain your decisions too much. You keep second-guessing yourself. You feel like you're never quite enough, never doing enough, giving enough, being enough. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Many of us grow up in emotional ecosystems where guilt and fear are used to control behavior. Not with bad intentions, but with inherited habits. A parent raises their voice, not because you're wrong, but because they were taught that emotion wins arguments. A partner goes cold instead of communicating, because that's what they saw modeled. A friend makes you feel responsible for their mood, not because they want to manipulate, but because they never learned to self-regulate. But the result is the same: you start living on eggshells. And when you live like that long enough, you start to believe it's normal. That it's your job to manage everyone else's comfort. That speaking honestly is selfish. That setting boundaries is cruel. That doing what's right for you is somehow a betrayal. It's not. Being kind doesn't mean being controlled. Being empathetic doesn't mean being manipulated. Love is not a currency that others should use to buy your compliance. But to break free from these subtle patterns, you first have to name them. You have to recognize when guilt is being used as a leash. When silence becomes punishment. When fear of conflict keeps you compliant. You have to look these behaviors in the eye and say, I see you. And I choose something better. That better is self-trust. It's the quiet inner knowing that you don't need to over-explain. That your needs matter too. That you're not cruel for choosing peace over performance. That walking away from guilt is not abandoning others, it's returning to yourself. And it's hard. Especially if the people in your life benefit from your silence. They might call you distant, selfish, cold. They might tighten the ropes, hoping you'll shrink again. Don't. Because the version of you who said yes out of fear was never truly loved. They were used. The version of you who says no with clarity and keeps standing when the silence comes, that's the version who is free. Here's a truth no one teaches: sometimes, peace feels like guilt at first. Because your nervous system is used to chaos. Used to control. Used to abandoning yourself for others. But guilt is not always a sign you're doing wrong. Sometimes, guilt is growing pains. A sign you're breaking a cycle. A sign you're healing. And healing never looks perfect. It looks like saying no with shaking hands. Like leaving the conversation early. Like not replying to the guilt trip text. Like learning that discomfort doesn't mean danger. This is what emotional freedom looks like: small acts of courage that no one sees. Boundaries that don't require permission. Choosing truth over comfort. You don't have to control others or be controlled by them. You can simply be. And that, despite everything you were taught, is more than enough. There's a moment in life, often early, often quiet, when you realize that being yourself isn't always safe. Maybe it was when you shared something and they laughed. Or when you were too loud, too honest, too different, and the room grew cold. Maybe it wasn't one moment, but 1,000 tiny ones. Each one teaching you the same thing: people like a version of you, but not all of you. So, you learn to adapt. You notice what gets approval and you start wearing it like a second skin. You get good grades. You stay polite. You don't ask for too much. You learn to read the room before you enter it, shape-shifting without even thinking. You become easy to like. Reliable. Predictable. Useful. But deep down, something starts to ache. Because approval feels nice, but it never feels real. It's like being applauded for a performance you didn't audition for. You feel seen, but not known. Loved, but not understood. Praised, but still lonely. And that loneliness is heavy, because from the outside, everything looks fine. No one sees the cost. They don't see the exhaustion of always smiling. The fear of being found out. The quiet resentment building under the surface. The disconnection from your own desires, because you've spent so long meeting everyone else's. You become a mirror, reflecting back what others want to see. But mirrors don't live. They don't feel. They don't choose. They only reflect. And when your worth is tied to that reflection, every look, every silence, every rejection feels like life or death. A friend forgets to text back? You wonder what you did wrong. A parent criticizes your choices? You question your path. A stranger doesn't like your post? You spiral. Because your identity isn't built from the inside, it's borrowed from the outside. And here's the truth: that's not your fault. You were taught to seek approval before you were old enough to question why. Conditioned to believe that being liked is the same as being worthy. Trained to think that fitting in was survival, because once, maybe it was. But you're not that child anymore. You can choose to stop performing. You can choose to disappoint others in order to be honest with yourself. You can learn to disappoint the version of yourself that was created to be liked and replace them with someone real. Not everyone will understand. Some will pull away when you stop mirroring them. When you stop nodding at everything they say. When you show up with truth instead of perfection. Let them. The people who only loved your reflection were never seeing you anyway. And the ones who stay? The ones who lean in when you're messy, honest, uncertain? They're not just seeing your light. They're seeing your shadow and loving you through it. That's real connection. But you won't find it until you stop trying to earn it. Approval is addictive. It feels safe. It feels sweet. But it will never satisfy the deeper hunger to be known, not just liked. To be free, not just admired. And here's the paradox. The more you chase approval, the more you lose yourself. But the more you return to who you really are, the more you attract people who approve of that, the real you, without effort, without performance. It's not easy. But it's worth it. Every time you say, "This is what I really want," even if someone disagrees. Every time you show up, not to please, but to connect. Every time you choose authenticity over acceptance. That's freedom. That's healing. That's you, not a mirror, but a person, finally, fully enough. At some point, you have to ask, whose story am I living? Because if you're honest, the script you've been following might not be yours at all. It was handed to you, subtly, slowly, over years. By parents who loved you but were afraid. By teachers who wanted order, not imagination. By a society that rewards obedience over originality. By systems that benefit when you doubt yourself. So you followed the story. You played the role. You studied what was practical. You smiled when you wanted to scream. You built a life that looked right but felt wrong. You followed rules that were never explained. You stopped asking questions because the answers were disappointing, or worse, dangerous. And in that quiet, something vital went missing. Not all at once. Piece by piece. First, your curiosity. Then, your voice. Then, your fire. Until all that remained was a quiet ache, a whisper from within that said, "There's more. This isn't it." That voice is not your enemy. It's your soul, waking up. Because no matter how long you've played a part, the real you is still there, waiting. Not the version others wrote. Not the version you edited for survival. But the messy, brilliant, complicated self who isn't afraid to begin again. This is where power returns. Not when you become someone else. But when you finally stop trying. When you tear up the script. When you stop asking for permission. When you no longer need applause to feel valid. Reclaiming your story is terrifying because it means owning your regrets, your wounds, your truth. It means losing some people who only like the edited version of you. It means facing a blank page with no guarantees. But it also means freedom. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are not too far gone. The pen is still in your hand. You can rewrite the beliefs they gave you. You can create new definitions of success, of love, of purpose. You can choose stillness over hustle, truth over politeness, courage over comfort. You can stop being a character in someone else's play and become the author of your own. Will it be easy? No. Some days you'll feel lost. Others, you'll feel alive for the first time. You'll grieve the old you and thank them for getting you this far. You'll stumble. You'll rise. You'll keep going. Because this time, the story is yours. And no one else gets to write the ending.